The young and the restless spoilers shock, a silent reckoning. The sun hung low over the park, casting long shadows that danced across the ground as the breeze rustled through the trees. Jordan stood near the edge of the park, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. She had been uneasy all day, her thoughts spiraling with the uncertainty of the meeting she had reluctantly agreed to. Claire had promised she would come alone, but Jordan couldn't shake the fear that the police might accompany her, ending everything with flashing lights and cold steel cuffs. Moments later, a lone figure appeared at the entrance to the park. It was Claire. She had come alone, just as she had promised. Her stride was deliberate, her face a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. Jordan felt a flicker of hope, but she remained guarded. Claire approached cautiously but without hesitation, stopping just a few steps away. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the storm raging inside her. "I'm here because I believe in you, Jordan," she began, her tone soft but insistent. "I've always believed in you. And I don't want us to be enemies anymore. Life's too short for that." Jordan's throat tightened. Claire's words were disarming, her sincerity cutting through the walls Jordan had spent years building. As Claire continued, her voice grew warmer. "We're family, Jordan. You're my aunt, and no one knows me better than you. You know every secret I've ever tried to bury, and you've kept them safe. I know I've made mistakes, but I also know that we can love and care for each other, truly. It's what we should have been doing all along." Jordan looked away, her eyes fixed on the ground. She had spent so long keeping her distance, her emotions locked away, that she hardly knew how to respond. Before she could summon the words, a shadow fell across them. It was Cole. His sudden appearance sent a ripple of unease through the air. Claire turned toward him, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. "Cole," she said, her voice faltering. "We shouldn't be meeting like this," Cole muttered, his eyes darting around the park as if expecting someone to leap out of the shadows. "If anyone sees us together, they'll start asking questions. And if those questions lead to answers, we could all be in serious trouble." Jordan stiffened. She knew Cole was right. The three of them together, in such a public place, was a recipe for disaster. "This isn't fair," Claire murmured, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Why can't we just talk without feeling like we're walking on a tightrope? Why does everything have to be so complicated?" Before anyone could respond, a movement in the distance caught Jordan's attention. She narrowed her eyes and spotted Nick lurking behind a cluster of trees, his body half hidden but his gaze locked on them. Jordan's heart sank. He had seen them. Worse, she had no idea how much he had overheard. Nick, for his part, was frozen in place, his mind racing. He hadn't heard the conversation, but he didn't need to. The sight of Claire and Cole together confirmed what he had suspected all along: they were deceiving Victoria, and their betrayal was bound to hurt her deeply. He clenched his fists, torn between confronting them and retreating before he was discovered. After what felt like an eternity, Nick decided on the latter. He backed away slowly, making sure his footsteps were silent. His heart pounded as he turned and slipped away, determined to figure out his next move. He couldn't let this go, but he also couldn't afford to act rashly. Back at the park, Jordan, Claire, and Cole were still grappling with the weight of their situation. "We need to leave," Jordan said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Being seen together like this is too risky." "But what about everything we just said?" Claire protested. "What about trying to fix things, to be better for each other?" Jordan hesitated, her resolve wavering for a moment. "We'll figure it out," she said finally. "But not here. Not now." Reluctantly, Claire and Cole agreed. The three of them parted ways, each heading in a different direction. But as Claire walked away, her heart heavy, she couldn't shake the feeling that the threads of her life were unraveling faster than she could mend them. And in the shadows, Nick watched them go, his resolve hardening. He didn't know how or when, but he knew one thing for certain: he would make sure Victoria learned the truth, no matter the cost. This story builds on your points, adding emotional depth, suspense, and intrigue while keeping the events logical and consistent. If you'd like any adjustments or expansions, feel free to let me know. The game of shadows. The wind carried an eerie stillness as Claire and Cole approached Jordan's modest hideout, a cabin tucked deep within the woods. They exchanged a nervous glance, each trying to mask their unease. They both knew the truth. Jordan wasn't just cunning, she was dangerous. If they made the wrong move, it could cost them their lives. Yet, for now, they had to play along, feed her delusion, and convince her they were allies. Jordan greeted them at the door with an unsettling calm, her sharp eyes scanning their faces. "You're late," she said, her voice a delicate thread between warmth and warning. Claire forced a smile, her heart racing. "We wanted to make sure no one followed us." "You can't be too careful." Jordan nodded approvingly, stepping aside to let them in. The interior of the cabin was a strange mix of coziness and unease, soft rugs and dim lighting that clashed with the locked steel cabinet in the corner and the unmistakable glint of a gun resting on the mantel. As they sat down, Jordan's gaze lingered on Claire. "You remind me so much of your mother," she said softly. "Back when things were simpler. Before." Her voice trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Before the betrayal. Before the spiral into chaos. Claire swallowed hard. She had spent months perfecting her act, playing the part of the loyal niece who longed to rebuild their broken bond. "I miss those days too," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "And I want us to have that again. I want us to be a family." Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly, as though searching for cracks in Claire's words. "And you, Cole? Do you share the same sentiment?" Cole, who had been silent until now, nodded quickly. "Of course. Family is everything." Jordan leaned back, her expression softening. "Good. Because family is all we have left. The Newmans, they don't understand loyalty. They think they can discard people like me and get away with it. But I'm done with revenge. I want to focus on what matters to us." It was a lie, of course. Claire could see it in Jordan's eyes. The simmering rage hadn't dissipated, it had simply been buried. But for now, Jordan believed in their charade, and that was all that mattered. A dangerous truth. Later that night, after Jordan had retired to her room, Claire and Cole sat in the dimly lit kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "She's buying it," Cole whispered, though his voice carried little relief. "But how long can we keep this up?" "She's not stupid." Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair. "We don't have a choice. If she finds out we're playing her, we're as good as dead." "And what about the other thing?" Cole's voice dropped even lower. "About you?" Claire froze. She had been dreading this moment, the weight of the secret she carried pressing heavily on her chest. "We can't think about that now," she said finally. "One problem at a time." But the problem wasn't so easily ignored. Claire's entire existence was a lie, and if Jordan ever discovered the truth, the consequences would be catastrophic. Claire wasn't Victoria Newman's daughter. She had infiltrated the family under false pretenses, carefully crafting an identity that fit seamlessly into their lives. The Newmans, blinded by their own dramas, had never suspected a thing. And now, Jordan knew everything. If Claire and Cole didn't tread carefully, the truth would unravel, leaving destruction in its wake. A false alliance. The next morning, Jordan seemed more at ease than usual, a rare smile playing on her lips as she prepared breakfast. "I've been thinking," she said, her tone unusually light. "Maybe it's time we left all this behind. Found somewhere new to start over. Somewhere we can just be a family." Claire exchanged a quick glance with Cole. The idea of being trapped with Jordan in some far-off place was terrifying, but they couldn't let her see their fear. "That sounds wonderful," Claire said, forcing a bright smile. "A fresh start. Just the three of us." Jordan's eyes gleamed with something akin to hope. "You mean that?" Of course, Cole added. We're in this together. Jordan seemed satisfied, but the tension in the room was palpable. Claire and Cole were walking a tightrope, their every word a calculated move in a dangerous game. The mask slips as the days passed, Jordan's behavior grew increasingly erratic. One moment, she was warm and nurturing, reminiscing about the past and planning their future. The next, her temper flared without warning, her words cutting like knives. Claire and Cole did their best to stay in her good graces, but the pressure was mounting. The closer they got to Jordan, the more volatile she became. And all the while, the shadow of Claire's secret loomed over them, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jordan turned to Claire, her expression unreadable. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, she said slowly. Something that doesn't quite add up. Claire's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Jordan leaned in, her eyes piercing. You're so much like Victoria, yet not. It's almost like you're not her daughter at all. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Cole shifted uncomfortably, but Claire held her ground, forcing herself to meet Jordan's gaze. What are you saying? Claire asked, her voice calm despite the panic rising inside her. Jordan studied her for a long moment before leaning back, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Nothing, she said finally. Just thinking out loud. But Claire knew better. The game was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. This narrative builds on the tension, deception, and high stakes you outlined while weaving in deeper emotional layers and suspense. If you'd like further expansion or adjustments, let me know.